Do you find yourself staying up late binging on TV shows like Squid Game, mindlessly scrolling through social media and navigating your day uninspired and aimless? If the answer is yes, there is a name for that blah you're feeling. It's called languishing. According to mental health experts, languishing is the neglected middle child of mental health that dulls your motivation and focus. And sadly, it is a dominant emotion of 2021. But the good news is, my guest today is a thought leader in the mental health space, and in today's episode, he's going to help you overcome languishing along with the other siblings of mental health like depression and suicide. Hi, this is Eric here, and you're listening to #Highly Sought After. His name is Kevin Wee, founder of Rebound with Resilience, a social enterprise and training provider dedicated to improving the resilience, mindset, and mental wellness of Singaporeans while supporting the employability of people with disabilities. Kevin has worked with over 100 schools and organizations, including Nanyang Technological University and SIM Global Education. His TikTok videos has also trended on the hashtag mental health awareness. And with October being Mental Health Month, I can't think of a better time to do this episode. So take a deep breath, relax, and join me on a journey to improving your mental well-being.
Yes!
I tell you, this introduction requires mental health.
I don't know why it's such a long intro, but
It's a long intro, but very well deserved one.
I'm so glad. I'm so humbled to be in this lovely studio. I think
Thank you.
this studio alone makes me feel inspired.
Thank you.
And not languish.
Not languish. Even though we have a
yeah.
big TV for Netflix.
Yeah.
Okay, now, Kevin, I have followed you for a while and for at least a year. And I noticed that you really are very good in the area of mental wellness. You're super committed, right, to helping people gain mental health.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, like, is there a backstory to all that? Like, do you kind of know that you want to do this since young?
It's very fascinating, you ask me. I think like our public voids are driven by our public values is driven by our private voids.
Wow.
And I
Can you
realized
say that
that-
one more time? This is so quotable.
Yeah, our public values, what we express, is driven by our private voids. And I think when you have a certain void, a certain, I won't say a calling, it's almost a responsibility, a gap that you want to feel, you go for it. And I think mental health became an obsession and a passion after I faced it myself. Never in a million years will I think that I'll be a speaker. Nowhere close to being a speaker, a trainer. All I wanted to do was to kind of go into prestigious professions, get the best grades. I never thought that entrepreneurship could be something that is like you could do for a living. But I think that changed when my A-levels.
Why, you didn't do well?
I didn't do well. I really messed up big time because of anxiety and eventually faced a period of depression and mania, which was fascinating, absolutely fascinating, because we kind of know like mental health, it's like we know on the surface what it is, but actually experiencing it, the lived experiences, is a different dimension. And
we're going to definitely dive deep into the topic of depression, right? But mania is something that I don't hear a lot about. Could you kind of walk us through the episode for you during junior college?
Mania is fascinating. I think in junior college, brief backstory, I was grew up as a perfect kid. Many of you are entrepreneurs, right? Perfectionists, just want to do well, competitive, work obsessed, right? And I think even if you talk about depression, there is research that shows that type A personalities are more correlated to mental health issues. Type A, right? Type A meaning like someone is just very driven, very ambitious. And that was me. So I faced a little bit of anxiety before my A's because, as Singaporeans, we are kind of conditioned. I'm not sure, whenever you're listening to this, I'm sure there's some social construct that your value is based on variables, right? Things that vary, things like popularity, opinions, your grades, achievements. And it's very dangerous to place your worth on these things because they can change anytime.
100%.
So that pressure I faced during my A's led to a certain anxiety before, and eventually I faced depression, and then I transitioned into mania.
And what is mania?
Mania is, if you Google it, Mania, it's a state, this is so depressing. It's a state of extreme high. when
Extreme
you
high.
you think of the most excited, enthusiastic person, maybe Eric, right? Person you know.
So I'm really suffering
Then
from
no,
mania?
no. Then you multiply that by 10.
Oh, okay.
That is mania.
Oh, God.
It's almost as if you're possessed with emotion to the point where you lose sight of reality. You think that you're the savior of the world and you do very extreme things.
Like what?
For me, wow, this so fast we're getting vulnerable already. But yeah, I mean, this is an episode we want to share, right? I think, wow, it was crazy. I think at that point of time, a thought infected me that I was going to become like a savior, kind of an avatar of Singapore's mental health scene. It's very odd. So I remember watching this YouTube video and this thought infected me that, hey, I'm going to create a video. Never in my life did I thought of creating a video, but somehow it just infected me. I remember eventually creating a 4-hour video where I burned my A-level cert. Yeah, so I started a fire in my room. I burned my A-level cert. Yeah, and I painted on the wall like with red paint, like grades will not define me. I did many extreme stuff also. Like, oh, this is going to sound very extreme to you knowing me now, right? But I'm just going to share. Like, I'm danced in my mom's nightgown. Yeah, I did a man versus wild segment, so I drank my own pee. I ate dog shit as well.
Wait, a man versus what?
Man versus wild segment. So like man versus wild, you know, Bear Grylls.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did that because I wanted to. That was what I enjoyed, right?
And you drank your own?
I drank my own pee.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's not that bad actually, because technically you can do that if you want to survive in the desert. But given the context of the video, it was pretty insane. So I think at that point of time, naturally it went viral, right? Because I came from an elite school and I was doing all this extreme stuff. So that was mania. And I think when people saw it, they thought that I lost it. I can't blame them. They really thought that I lost it. And my friends kind of left me or they stopped talking to me.
But why was your mania so focused on mental health? Like at 17 years old, why would you think that you are a savior on the topic of mental health?
Oh, very simply because it was depression flipped over. Like, okay, it's very hard. Okay, I guess bipolar, you have heard of bipolar before, right?
Yes.
You transition between states. I think there's a chemical basis behind it. Personally, I would not know what's going on in my mind, but I do know that I stopped medication quite abruptly. That could have caused the switch lah. I'm not sure, but I know for a fact that one day I sat down and slowly my depression kind of reduced and kind of dissipated. And remember one day where I thought to myself, you know what? I don't need to go to university to be successful. I remember this flood of emotions pouring over me, this liberation, this almost as if epiphany. Like you're suddenly liberated, you're transformed the new person. That was the start of mania. I remember that day very clearly, right? That was the switch to a different mental state, a different physiological state, where this intense high that I couldn't sleep for 4 days.
Oh my.
I had to take medication to sleep because when it's constant adrenaline flowing to your body, you know, it's almost as if you're, like I said, possessed. Like, I guess the best analogy I can give audience is like Black Spider-Man. You know, like Spider-Man was possessed with venom. He became black. Venom. His traits became amplified. I watched the video, right? It was still me. But my traits were being amplified, right? And I think why, going back to your question, the reason why mental health is because I wanted to be an advocate. I felt that this is the way I can show people because I went through it.
Yeah.
That resentment was turned upside down.
Wow.
Was flipped on it.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's crazy. I think I eventually came to balance because of good mentors. And now I'm still doing the same thing.
Yeah,
but,
so what's going to say that you're not in mania right now? A toned down version of mania. And how do you distinguish mania from a very healthy obsession that we all see entrepreneurs have, right?
Yeah. Wow. I think it's hard to define it. Eric, I wish I could answer this question. But I would argue, right, that mental health, of course, I'm not a doctor, but I have spoken to professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists, look at the DSM-5, right, which is basically a diagnostic statistic. I just screwed up. Just search DSM. It's basically the manual to diagnose mental health conditions.
Okay.
But for your own purpose, right, I think mental health actually exists on a spectrum in intensity and frequency. All of us have mental health. You only get to a state where it's very frequent and very intense. Then we classify it as, say, okay, you have depression, you have mania. So it could even be a misdiagnosis and whatever, right? Because it's anyone can diagnose it, right? I mean, doctors can diagnose it. But my point is that you need to be aware of the intensity and the frequency at which you face certain thoughts.
And I would love to cover that really soon, but let's wrap up the question number one. So would you say that you're recovered from mania?
I would say so.
How? Like by a doctor or by yourself?
Wow. Eric, this is a good question, but it is very clear that in that state of mind, right, I was a different person. Very clear. If you go and look back at me, right, it was me, and yeah, it's not me.
Is the video still online?
No, I have it saved somewhere. I don't think you want to look at it, Ari. It's pretty intense. But I can't even recognize.
Let us know
yeah.
if you guys want to see it. Then I'll maybe ask him to show like 5
Snippets
seconds of it.
Maybe I'll just put a
like,
snippet
yeah,
and take a look.
exactly. Okay,
Yeah.
but so sorry to cut
different.
you, but you're saying that obviously you felt like you're recovered because you're different. You're no
It's
longer
different.
that guy.
Even depression as well. Is the intensity of it's insane. Like right now, you think about the lowest point in my last 2 years. Maybe that's losing my LinkedIn account, right? Separate thing, right? That's considered maybe my lowest point in the last couple of months. It is nothing compared to the height of depression. Nothing. Depression is really an animal by itself. It's like you cannot control your own thoughts. You cannot. And I'll wrap up with this, Eric, don't mind. Like, I would argue that one of the greatest spiritual powers we have as human beings, right, is the ability to adapt despite our challenges, right? The ability to bounce back and adapt to whatever challenge that comes our way. Whatever that is, spirituality, psychology, whatever we use, right, we can overcome and get stronger. The devastation of depression, right, is that it takes away that ability. It takes away your ability to overcome. And without that ability, you're helpless. It is like infecting the hard drive of a computer. It's the hard drive that's running the computer. But if you infect the very thing that stops you, the very thing that helps you overcome, right, you become helpless. That was what I felt like during depression.
And let's go into it. Let's just go into that. That's one of the key topics of mental health, right? And what do you think is the opposite of mental health then? Mental illness?
Opposite of mental health as in positive mental health, right?
So to you, mental health is a negative?
No. To me now, right, mental health is a spectrum and it's a necessity. To me, mental health, when people say mental health, naturally is tied to conditions. But to me, mental health, it's everything. It's our life. Everything stems from the mind, and therefore mental health, it's simply the understanding of your mind and how I won't say program sounds very and like computer, how you structure it, how you live your life such that you're well and you're productive and you're happy, because your emotions, everything stems from your mind.
Got it. So I would say that mental health is a spectrum, and on one end we have mental wellness, right, where we feel a lot of positive emotions, and then on the other spectrum would be where we have mental illnesses, like depression and anxiety and languishing, which we'll talk about later, right? So maybe let's go into depression then, since this is a very, very key one for you, right?
Sure.
Walk us through that period of your time when you were feeling those emotions. How was it like? Give us a sense.
So I handed up blank papers for my math A-levels. So 6-hour paper. Yeah, paper 1, paper 2, both I handed up blank papers. I just went in there. I had a complete mental block. Okay, I know I practiced this hundreds of times, but I had a complete mental block. That was the start of depression. That was the start where I remember the thoughts just keep flooding in. What happens? What will people think about me? What about my future? What my parents would think? What about my dreams? All my dreams were tied to after my A-levels, right? And so that was the beginning. I think it was just an influx of negative thoughts that I couldn't control. I couldn't get out of that spiral. And the worse it progressed, right? I struggled through the rest of my 20 papers like that. And I remember immediately after my A-levels ended, okay, I went home, I slept. I remember waking up in a cold sweat.
Oh man.
Okay, cold sweater. And for the first time in my life, a suicidal thought actually entered my mind. Now, I was scared because of 2 reasons. Number one was that it came in. I was scared I was even capable of such a thought. Right? Number 2, I had no control over it. The second thing scared me more. Because, I grew up with a very strong Christian influence, right? So I'll never think that taking my life is something that ever crossed my mind. And the scary thing is that I even judged myself for it. I said, how can I feel this way? My life is precious. So scary. It's a double-edged sword. All the tools that helped me to overcome became a way to judge me. Because it's almost as if I don't have enough faith, that's why I'm feeling this way, right? Which again, it shouldn't be.
Condemned.
Yeah. Which again shouldn't be the case, but that's what depression does to you. It's like a filter. Everything is interpreted negatively, and at least I feel that suicidal thoughts is a part of it. It's a very strong part of depression where you cannot control certain thoughts, okay, maybe it's better to take my life.
So it could be like a manifestation or at the prime or the peak
The
of
heat,
depression.
the height of it.
The height of it.
Yeah.
So we hear people using this word a lot, right? Depression, depressed. How do we distinguish between clinical depression and like just sadness?
Just a colloquial kind
And
of say,
being
I'm depressed,
negative,
right?
you know? Yeah.
I'll give you a quote. This is by Andrew Solomon. He spent decades studying about this. He said this, it's a great poverty of the English language that we use the word depression to refer to a kid when it rains on his birthday and to refer to a person a moment before he commits suicide. That's why it's difficult, because it's hard to differentiate that even people that use it as a way to escape NS. Think about it. And it's true, during enlistment day, IMH will have more people going there. Because it's very sad, and sometimes as doctors, they find it hard to differentiate because it's in the mind as well. How can you tell whether somebody is faking or not?
Yes.
It's really difficult. So, but what I would say is that if you ask me, having gone through it itself, right, I would say that depression is a completely different animal. It is very clear when you face it, right? You cannot control your own thoughts, and it's a very extended period of low. If you want a technical definition of it, right, according to DSM, it is at least 4 to 6 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks of feeling certain symptoms of depression, intensity and frequency over a period of time. Then you could be diagnosed as potentially clinically depressed.
And what are some of the symptoms that we need to take note of?
Loss of appetite, loss of interest, like languishing could be one thing. Suicidal thoughts, just complete loss of interest of things that used to bring you joy. So anything that, basically a period of loss of meaning for a period of time where you just feel like life has no purpose. Or it could be a state of reactivity, right, where you cannot get out of that spiral of thoughts. You cannot control your thoughts. Repetitive racing, ruminations, you cannot control.
And they're all negative.
They're all negative.
Condemning.
Yes. I came to a point where and I'll share with this, it might seem a bit scary, but I'll tell you like it is that I remember after I visited IMH, right, at that point of time, wasn't hospitalized yet. But when I was coming back home, I remember sitting down at Sing Siong coffee shop with my parents, right? I'll never forget this. Like, I was visualizing my funeral. My friends sitting in the front row, and then it got worse and worse. I was visualizing myself getting chopped up into different pieces.
Oh.
Yeah, animals eating me. So it's just very weird thoughts about death and thoughts about myself dying.
It's so random.
It is very random, and you cannot control it. So I remember thinking to myself, right? I told my mom, this is it. I believe with every fiber of my being, right? Then that was it. That nothing was able to help me anymore.
And how did your mom respond?
They brought me to a private hospital, I remember. Yeah, they brought me to a private hospital, and the doctor actually looked at me. I think he was a psychiatrist, a specialist, and he gave me a tranquilizer. So when I woke up, those thoughts were actually cleared. Yeah, it was cleared a little bit. I think he told me that I was facing a very intense stress reaction, and therefore it's not uncommon. That's what he told me.
So would you say that all these depressive thoughts came out of a very big trigger, which is the A-level exams?
And a very intense stressor. Usually, again, it's hard. Okay, I want to just state this point that it's not good for us to generalize completely when it comes to mental health because it exists on a spectrum. And to answer your question, if you're not sure whether you're facing clinical depression or not, doesn't matter. The point is that go and seek help. If you know that you're at a state where you're no longer where you used to be, or in a state where you're languishing, or you're facing certain things that you cannot control, regardless of whether you think it's depression or not, seek help. Right?
Is that what you did? Like, because you said that your parents sent you for private help, right?
Yeah, that's what I did. And I think that was a lifesaver.
And what did they do to you to help you on your path of recovery, besides the tranquilizers?
It was a combination of medication. So one was medication, there was a tranquilizer, there was some psychosomatic, some antidepressants. So I do believe that helps. Of course, in your context, you got to apply it properly. You cannot just take antidepressants off the shelf, that's dangerous. But for me, I took it in certain dosage. And this is very important. Mental health recovery cannot just be physiology. It cannot just be chemistry. It also has to be psychosocial support. It has to be community support. It has to be reframing of your cognitive biases, your mindset. It's a combination of that, community support, plus certain mindset shifts that I made, plus certain things that I guess you can talk about. It got me out of languishing, volunteering. was something that really helped me. All this combination of things, right, led to a recovery. And this is what people advocate for, because people might say that bring in something, right? People might say mental illness is like is no different from a medical illness. Heard this before, right? The medical illness, you need medication. Mental illness, you also need medication. So it's meant to reduce stigma, and that's fine. But when people say that, right, they forget that in a flu, for example, when you face a flu, you are very unlikely to question the meaning of life.
Yes.
Whereas in mental health conditions, right, or illnesses, it affects your affect, it affects your identity. That is what makes it so scary, defining and scary. And also, in, for example, a flu, right, just taking medication can help you to recover. You may not necessarily need very strong psychosocial support, right? Psycho means psychology, social means social support. You may not need that. But in mental health conditions, you need that. And when you make that comparison, you could cause people to think that, if I just take medication, I'll be fine. Which is not the case.
I love that, because what you just showed me is that if I get physical issues, right, it's mainly just chemistry, which is your medicine.
Yeah.
But if I suffer from something that's more mental illnesses, right, I have to go chemistry. But I have also have the psychology, which is where the source of the problem is, and then also the social support. Right. So help me out with the psychology part first. What can I do when I start noticing that I'm having more frequent, because we all have negative thoughts, but you just help me understand that it's not just about having negative thoughts, it's the intensity of those thoughts and the frequency of these thoughts that define whether you might have a clinical depression or not. So how do I manage those thoughts from a psychological point of view?
It's a great question, Eric, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs are listening to this podcast, right? And they do face,
and we're going through so much stress with the pandemic, managing work from home. There's a lot of stresses.
I would argue that having a therapist is a good step. Going to seeing someone, nominalizing it, seeing a therapist. I think when people go to see a therapist, they think that, there's something wrong with me. There's a certain self-stigma that comes along with it. It is no different from brushing your teeth, for example. And that's why in schools, we try and, right now, there's a push to say that all kids need to go and brush their teeth, see the dentist, right? Why not make all students go and see a counselor as a mental health check-in?
Good point.
Then it normalizes it already, right? And so I think we have first of all, we have to realize in our head that somebody helping us to go through our thoughts, helping us to see our cognitive biases, right? Or certain conditioning that we have that's not healthy, certain underlying basement beliefs that are not healthy. For me, that was a type A personality. For me, that was all or nothing mentality. You either get straight A's or you screw up and you just crash and burn.
And because you know you're not going to get a straight A's already, therefore it's zero already.
Correct. So that's a very unhealthy mindset people have. And there's a lot of cognitive problems that people have, right? And I think the technical word for this is called cognitive restructuring, or we call it CBT. That's the most common therapy that people use, but there's many, many different ones. But the whole intention is to help you gain awareness of what is the psychology that could be causing certain emotions.
No, this is so amazing. And I'll tell you why. I've never shared this in public before. But about 2 years ago, I undergo depression as well. But that's why I ask you whether is it clinical or not, because I didn't see a doctor for it. But what I do know is I felt like my entire world is shrouded with some kind of darkness. And the birds chirping doesn't sound as happy as before. The sunshine doesn't sound as doesn't feel as bright. And the worst part is when everybody that's happy around me, I felt like I am a third party watching them being happy, but I can never understand why. I'm like in a bubble of my own. And it was very scary because I felt alone. I felt trapped in my own mind. And I couldn't get out. And the worst thing is being a public figure and people kind of remember me for my identity as a positive person. And that kind of make it worse because I felt like I cannot go public to explain how I feel. And I had a lot of fear. The saving grace was I reached out to a friend who I knew had depression before. So I figured I'd learn from someone who has battled it. And she was very kind. She gave me that social support, like you said. And she just listened to how I'm feeling. And she taught me one thing that I think would really help a lot of us, which is she taught me that depression is going to come and go. You're not going to ever think that all of us are going to go through that because we're going to go through different struggles and stresses. The magic or the key is to understand what is the trigger for you. So like for you, your trigger is that thinking, right? That is all or nothing. You know what's mine? Pain. I can't take physical pain.
Oh, wow.
It's so interesting. I cannot take pain. Like pain kills me. or I think pain kills me.
Okay.
And because I think pain kills me, so there was a period of time I just had very bad neck spine.
I see.
And it
So it's
triggered my
kind of-
shoulder.
Okay.
So that pain causes me to think that I'm going to die.
Yeah, it's that pervasive catastrophizing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I realized that the way to deal with depression is to make sure that I remove that stressor. Because the minute I remove that stressor and start coming up with a better narrative of pain, it got a little bit better, which is exactly why you talk about the psychology part.
Could I add a different and
Please
also
do,
a
please.
flavor to it, right? What if we cannot remove the stressor completely?
Oh no, then how?
So this is interesting. I think as much as possible, we want to remove the stressor, definitely, or reduce it and manage the environment. That's key. Environmental modification is absolutely key in almost anything, even habit change. Very powerful. But if we cannot remove the stressor completely, another way is to change the way we evaluate or interpret the stressor. Because one aspect of cognitive thinking, right, is that it's not the event that causes the stress, it is our interpretation of it.
Well said.
And learning how to change the interpretation helped me as well, because I interpret, okay, now no matter what, I'm not going to change the fact that I failed my A-levels. I'm not going to change the fact that I'll never become a doctor or lawyer or whatever. But I interpret it differently. I said that, you know what, now's a chance for me to go on a different path, to redefine my own success. And the way I treated the stresses, and even in future where I feel certain grades that are not as good, or I feel certain triggers, I do my best to interpret it differently now.
And how do you add strength to that new interpretation? Because we are so used to the old narrative, right? How do we change? How do we make the new narrative strong?
Well, I would say, I think you're very good at this, Eric. You help so many people with this. I would say awareness is one thing. If you're not even aware of what it is, how can you change it? Awareness is the first thing, right? Whether listening to a podcast, for example, this podcast, or going to a therapist, then you understand, hey, this is underlying, this is the reason. Then you can take action. So the first A is awareness, second is action. I think there's certain neurons that's being wired in your brain. You keep thinking a certain way, and that's why it's like that. And the great thing about this is that it can be rewired, right? Neuroplasticity, science has shown us that if you use a pathway less and you use a pathway more, the old pathway will slowly prune and the new pathway will become stronger. And that was what I did coming out of depression. I built that new pathway, you know. And the final thing is association. Like what you said, who you associate with and what you associate with is absolutely crucial, because your environment is stronger than your will sometimes.
And what do you mean by associate? So give us an example how to apply this.
Associate basically means what you surround yourself with, right? What you listen to, your five senses. What is coming into your five senses? That's your association. Because information is taken in from our five senses. What? How we get our belief systems is because of our five senses. Yeah.
So would you say that the way to curb depression or manage depression is to actually, it all starts with our thoughts, being very aware of what thoughts is coming in, and identifying those negative ones, being aware of why do we have those thoughts and what stories do we tell about those thoughts, and then modify them.
I would say that's one aspect of it, probably not the only one. And I also say that everyone's depression is very unique. That's the thing about it. Yes, there's certain overlaps, but it's very, very unique. And no one, even me, not you, can understand the struggle that you're going through right now. And therefore, you need to look at patterns, principles, and apply in your own context. But definitely, cognitive restructuring, learning how to rewire your thoughts, right? Your beliefs, there's definitely one aspect that can help.
What are some of the bad advice that we should never give to people who are depressed? Who say that I'm depressed?
Yeah, I think dismissing is one. Like, just why are you feeling this way? Dismissing is one. Comparing is another one. And how come you feel this way? Your brother is less successful, but he's so happy, right? That's comparing. Another one is making it about yourself. You say, hey, actually, it's not that bad. I know I faced this also recently, and then I overcome it. So that's one. Dismissing, judging, making it about yourself, comparing. Basically anything that invalidates their experience. What you want to do, and I think you talked about this a lot in your TikToks as well, and even in your content, is that you want to be able to hold space for them to form, I like to think of it as an imaginary bubble that's wrapping around us, right? And if you hold space for someone, you listen with the intention to understand, not with the intention to respond, then this bubble becomes thicker and thicker. And it comforts, it empowers. That was what my friends and my mom and dad did for me over a lengthy period of time before I got out of depression, but they did it for months. Now, the moment you judge, the moment you dismiss it, you're popping that bubble. The bubble bursts, and the person leaves feeling even more judged, disempowered, and in sad cases, even taking their life.
Understand. So have create space to not judge, to listen, to understand. Don't try to change the person because only he can or she can get out of their own depression bubble, right?
Don't fix them immediately.
And so just listen. And then the best thing that we can do is to advise them to look for professional help. How do we make them more open to looking for that?
I think one thing people ask is like, how do you help someone who doesn't want to be helped, right? And I think it's a tricky question. You just have to hold space and be there for the person. And once that trust is built, then you can make a suggestion or make an encouragement to help. And this is from people in SCMH, different people. They have realized me that maybe explain to them, rationalize to them why this will actually help them instead of saying just go. And also possibly accompany them on the first time because they might feel afraid, especially if you are a good friend. Accompany them to help seeking sources, and then from there, establish a support system for them. You cannot be the primarily support system.
100%. Yeah. Let's go one more step further, all right? Because we saw the end point of, or we talk about the height of depression, unfortunately, would be suicide. Have you lost anybody before through suicide?
No, I have not, and I'm thankful that I don't have to experience that kind of pain. But it is a problem. I think at least for example, in Singapore, last year suicides were 17% increase, highest in decade, right? I think so, but highest in a very long time partially because of the pandemic, and it's sad. Is a leading cause of death among 10 to 29-year-olds.
Wow.
Yeah, suicide is the leading cause of death among 10 to 29-year-olds. So it is a problem.
Why do you think is that case? That suicidal thoughts are becoming more and more pervasive and this is happening?
Suicide is difficult to discuss because even after all the research, there's no definitive claim about what causes suicide. There's a myriad of factors that lead to it. But what we do know is that if someone has a history of attempting suicide, attempts is a risk factor. Another reason is they're in pain. What we do know is that people are in pain, and that's why they would consider that. They're in pain, whether physical pain, emotional pain. I think as human beings, we are wired to survive, right? When you go and lean over a 10-story building, right, you immediately feel that urge to
protect
get
yourself,
away, right?
Yeah.
To be able to completely ignore that and go, the person must be in huge pain or complete seared conscious, where you get into this state of complete numbness. Very scary. But I do know that, and that's why it's very, very tough, when we ask this question, is suicide selfish?
Oh.
Do you think suicide is selfish?
No, you can't ever ask that question. Yeah. I think one of the worst advice to ever give to someone who tell you they have suicidal thought is to say that, what about your family members? To guilt trip them. Because as it is, they're already feeling so lonely and so in pain. And then when you guilt trip them and say that, what about your mom and dad, your family members? It makes them feel like all you care about is yourself. You don't care about them, which is precisely the problem. So I would say that I would not even begin that train of thought. If anything, I feel that the way to deal with people with suicidal thoughts is exactly what you just said, which is to create a bubble of space, to hold space and to show genuine empathy, to just understand what they're going through.
I think it's very hard because if I were to play the devil's advocate and I say that if somebody wants to take their life and you know that their pain will be gone when they do it, is it fine to let them say, you know what, it's okay to go? Why are you holding them back and trying so hard when you know that this can be solved for them in an instant? It's so difficult, right?
Okay. The reason why I find it easier to want to help that person and not just let a person go, even though he's going through a lot of pain, is simply because I see it as a better way. And that's the problem, right? Because people who are suicidal don't see a better way.
Okay, fair. And I think that'll be the same answer that I would give. I know I was still trying to help the person. You know why? Because I was once there before and I felt the exact same way. But I know that looking back, my life can be so much better. And just from research alone, there are many people who felt that way but didn't take their life, and now they live with so much hope and joy. So that alone is enough to tell me that I will help the person.
And can I ask you, like, because you did mention that you also had suicidal thoughts, right?
Yeah.
How do you process those thoughts out? Because you're here, happy, alive,
Yeah.
healthy. How do you process it so that someone listening to us right now with suicidal thoughts, they know what to do?
Sure. I leaned very closely on close friends and family. I leaned on them. Even when it was very difficult, I said, I just honestly them, I said, I cannot control it. I'm feeling of taking my life sometimes, and they just said, they empathize with me. They empathized, but they didn't validate me. They didn't say, go obviously go and take a life, right?
Empathize but not encourage.
Yes, yes. I think that's important to the point where it's slowly reduced. But in the height of it, right, it's just about being there and providing that space for someone until it starts to alleviate a little bit. At least that's for my case. I would say that I would say also that pardon me, I lost my train of thought. You were mentioning about how I dealt with it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you said that you lean in very closely to your friends and family members,
Yeah.
right? And they didn't judge you,
okay.
they didn't encourage
Correct.
you.
I would like to say that I never really hatched a plan. I didn't have a serious attempt of suicide. For me, it's at a very base level where it's just coming in as a symptom of depression. But I feel that when it's intensified with other things, right, like psychosis or maybe eating disorders or a lot of other things that comes in, then people might eventually get into a state of numbness where they hatch a plan and they can't do it. But for me, I never reached the stage where I hatched a plan.
So, I wanna before we go into the last topic today,
Yeah.
right? I mean, let's see what we can do to help these people. So, if let's say we see ourselves on the path where we're getting a lot of depressive thoughts and we have those suicidal thoughts, and you did mention that we should we should seek help and all that. But how can we have that awareness to do that?
Okay, let me give them based on I can only share from my experience, right?
Sure.
To the audience listening. Volunteer. I think find do small things that make you happy. Do small things that help you to spark joy. In my experience, that was going to volunteer at Cerebral Palsy Center. I went to volunteer at dog shelters. Okay, I remember they came to me, and they nuzzled up to me very close, and what I felt then, right, Eric, was something that I've never felt before. Not that I never felt before, but when I went there, they did not care whether I get straight A's, straight F's. They did not care whether I was tall, short, fat, skinny. The only thing they cared about was that I was there, serving them, loving them, and they gave me back their love in return. I would argue that love is the antidote to this. It's the most healing thing possibly you can ever experience. I think and I feel that love is the way to go. In those moments, I felt unconditional love and it pervaded my spirit. I realized that I have value as a human being despite all the external variables in my life. I had value, and that was one of the key psychological shifts that I made. Powerful, and it's also because chemistry-wise, I was moving. You guys have to move. When you move, also the endorphins go about. So when you exercise, when I cycle the dog shelters, that also helped. And I would say that the final thing to keep in mind, right, is hope. There is research. Okay, I have researchers that do research into recovery in an Asian context. And one new variable they're looking to they explored recently is hope. This idea of where do you find hope and how do you cling on to that hope, even though it's a very small glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
Maybe it's listening to Eric's podcast, right? Maybe it's listening to one TikTok. Maybe it's looking at the people that you love and remembering what they did for you. Whatever small things that you have, right, you cling on to it with whatever that you have. I know that it's difficult in that moment, but you just cling on to it, right, with whatever you have. And I do hope and I pray that one day those thoughts will slowly alleviate. Okay, and then you will look back and you will help someone in a similar position as well.
This is so beautiful and very powerful. I'm hearing two things from you. Number one is that sometimes, like I said, depression is about being trapped in your own mind. And by you volunteering, you are essentially caring about someone else, and you are essentially stepping away from your own mind.
Yes.
And I don't know. I just feel that you're no longer, it's about ego, you see. You're stepping out of your own ego, and by caring about someone else, and then when that person return back that love to you, you get validated and it kind of give you a positive cycle.
Yeah. It's a helping high, we call it. It's research. The oxytocin, the serotonin comes in, is a helper's high, we call it. Even if you're not necessarily facing a depressive episode, do it. Do it. Just be kind. Help other people. Because honestly, when you give, for example, if you just go to, like, recently I went to the petrol station, I pump gas, right? And I see them working so hard. I just take out a simple $10 note. I say, this is for you. Right? Please take care of yourself. Buy a good meal for yourself. And then you look at the gratitude on their face. That alone is worth more than that stupid $10.
Wow.
It's infinite happiness that you get from it. You know what I mean? I'm getting emotional talking about this because it's so funny, and it's funny because like they feel that it's so odd that I'm doing that.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be. It should be the norm that we be kind to each
Yeah,
other.
it's kind of sad, huh?
Right.
That we don't see this as a norm.
But it's very sad because we are kind of conditioned into scarcity when
What are
we're
you
young.
moved by, Kevin?
No, I'm very moved because, okay, first of all, you have shown me this, right? You are someone that exemplifies this, right? You have a certain influence, you have an audience, and you're willing to invite someone like me. I really do not consider myself as influential as you, and you have so much gratitude to help people who, I guess, on the surface, may not be able to help you back. Just that abundance that you have, I think I'm very grateful for that. And I think also for me, I'm very grateful that I am in a position to be able to help someone else. Because 7 years ago, looking out the window like this, right, thinking like, okay, my life, I really believe with 1000% certainty that my life would just be a shell of what I used to be. That I'll never ever be useful. Right? Never. And the fact that I can see here today, right, I'm just so grateful, and I hope that y'all can feel that as well for yourselves. That
And you say hope, right? And for you, you lean into your family and your friends.
Yeah.
Can you tell our listeners and our viewers where can we source for hope? Where are places that we can get? Because sometimes you are right. In the world of darkness, we just need a slither of light.
yes.
Because if I can see just a little bit, I'm going to chase after that, because that's could be the end of the tunnel, right? Where can we find those light?
The most common is online. You have to look at podcasts of relatability. You may not necessarily see them personally, but listening to their stories, there's a certain relatability, there's a certain hope that comes about. When you listen to other stories that might have gone through similar, you say that, wow, that's like me, but he or she came out of it. So there are a couple of podcasts, you can listen to. I run a podcast as well. I haven't talked about
Rebound with
this yet.
resilience.
Yeah, I haven't talked about
That would
this,
be a
but
good
thank you
source of light.
for allowing me to bring my little thing here, Rebound and Resilience. I host a podcast where people share their stories of hope and recovery. And also I would say that community, there are things in the community locally. Again, if you're listening overseas, there are certain community groups that help people with conditions. In Singapore, SAMH, I think, is one of them. Recently, a very cute, there's a Queenstown pod, moving pod. It's like a pod for mental health, a moving van for mental health. So in overseas, right, they have this recovery-oriented model where it's very based around the person, right? And they have these centers where they set up just for people to go into and have conversations.
This is so beautiful.
Yeah, hopefully it comes to Singapore.
Yeah, and I think what I've also learned from you just now is that to kind of remove, it's going to take a while for society to remove the stigma of mental health, okay? But we can do it ourselves first.
Yeah.
That it is okay to seek help. It is okay to lean on someone, because you say you're a Christian, right? And I remember this before, that you know how the devil attacks? The devil attacks by making you feel alone. Because the minute you feel alone, you're not seek help. And you're not seek help, that's when you're the most vulnerable.
And they say, right, an idle mind is a devil's workshop.
Say that
Very
again,
scary.
it's so powerful.
An idle mind is a devil's workshop.
An idle mind. What is an idle mind to you?
Languishing.
And that's a beautiful way to actually lead to our third topic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Idle basically, you're not doing anything. You're just there surviving. You're not living, you're just surviving. And you get into a space where you're comfortable with your own pain. You're comfortable just sitting there watching shows after shows after shows.
Binging, basically. Aimless.
Yeah.
And well, let's talk about languishing. I learned a new word recently as I was preparing for this interview. And languishing, right? And if you guys were listening to the podcast or watching the video earlier, I mentioned that what is languishing? Languishing is when, you stay out late to binge on TV or Netflix. You're mindlessly scrolling through your social media. You are navigating through your day super aimlessly. And you don't really have anything that excites you anymore. It's that feeling of blandness, or some of us call it a meh kind of feeling, right? I've researched a lot about languishing, and I've found out
Very
that
common.
languishing, number one, is very common, especially with the pandemic.
Yes.
But you know what's the scary part,
Yeah.
Kevin? Languishing is actually a precursor to depression. So let's talk about languishing, right? I'm pretty sure, let us know in the comment section if you guys are experiencing languishing. I sure do. There are seasons of my life where I do languish. Now I at least have a word to describe how I'm feeling. Because some people might say, oh, you're just chilling.
Yeah.
But there's a very big difference between chilling and languishing.
It's a huge difference.
So why do you think why is languishing a dominant emotion in 2021?
Because it's the easy way out, lah. It is much easier to languish than to face your problems. And I think that's tough because like to have a conversation with yourself and face it head on can sometimes be at least in our minds, a very big thing. Like I have to go through so many things to tackle this issue, right? Why not I just chill? And I think there's a very fine line between a safe space and hiding or languishing from the world, right? Because a safe space could be maybe I'm just playing my video games for a while, right? That's a way to just chill. But there's a fine line when you do it and then you keep doing it and you don't face reality. The difference is that you don't want to face reality anymore. A safe space is a place where you recharge to go out there and face the battles. Languishing is when you retreat and you stay there forever.
Wow, I love it. I heard it said before that, languishing is passive engagement of a virtual world. While the opposite of languishing is flourishing, is the active participation of the real world. And I think
Great
a lot
definition.
of us are actually doing a lot of the escaping and seeking comfort in those worlds, right? And it's so prevalent nowadays, so easy to watch Netflix and to be on social media. How do we overcome that? What's your way?
Yeah, I think first of all, awareness definitely helps. We need to know that this may not be productive for us in the long run. The thing is that I would think that if they're happy, then it's fine, right? If they're really happy, genuinely happy with their state, right? It's okay. But a lot of times, like you say, languishing is a state where deep down inside, you're not happy. You're not. Like, you know that this is bad, but you can't get out of it, right? Because it's just...
And you're not burnt out, by the way. For those of you listening, languishing is not that you're tired or you're burnt out. You're actually okay. Your life is okay. You're kind of like floating in life.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing, but I like what you said, that I think only we know ourselves. That are we languishing or are we just chilling? Yeah. And we have to have an honest look at that.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of happiness and fulfillment that comes from striving, that comes from contribution and experiencing. Languishing denies you of that privilege. As human beings, we can experience, we can grow, we can contribute. These are the three end goals that we strive after that gives us lasting fulfillment and joy, right? But when you languish, you deny yourself experiencing these three things. And I think that's one of the reasons why we want to step out. And going along that train of thought as well, you have to get out there and experience. You have to take small action steps. Start with like very small things. Like for me, it was volunteering. I was partially languishing at home, right? Because depression, I don't want to get out of the house. But I just took that step, let me go and volunteer. Let me just get out there and do something with my life. And then just that tiny steps build on each other. So the first thing is find something that you used to enjoy or you think that you might enjoy and just will yourself to get out of it. And there are many stories, right, that of people that I feature in a podcast that have languished before. And there are certain patterns I noticed in their because I always ask them how they overcome. I'll just share from their
And what was
experience.
okay, first of all, let's talk about pattern. Like what do they do that make them feel that they're languishing?
They just sit at home and watch videos. After videos, they just chill and they know that there's a lack of meaning in their life. And there's escapism, like you said.
How did they? What's the 3 best tips that they have given you on how to overcome it?
I would say there's a pattern. One is that their friends drag them out of it.
Good. So you need to hang out with the right people.
Yeah, I mean, there was one entrepreneur. I think Reggie. You know Reggie.
Oh my God, Reggie! He was my guest. What? Reggie languished?
Reggie Cole.
Are you sure Reggie languished? Reggie?
There was a point where he said that he didn't want to do anything, and his friends literally had to drag him out to the gym just once a week. to go to the gym and say, you know what, I don't care. He said he was so thankful to his friend that came to his house and dragged him out.
Okay, so we need friends that drag us out. That's one.
If you do not have that, then I think another one was a friend that actually read this book called Man's Search for Meaning.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, it's a book by Viktor Frankl. So I think he redefined what meaning meant to him. I think he was searching so hard for meaning, he couldn't find it. That's why he languished. But I think there's a quote in the book that flipped it around. He said that it's not our response, it's not for us to ask what is our life's meaning, but instead, life asks us, what is the meaning of your life? And life demands an answer. So
and there's no right answer.
Yeah.
It's up to us to create something.
Correct. And so I think the point of Viktor Frankl's, his point, what the powerful phrase was trying to say is that maybe life doesn't have set meaning, but in your struggles, in your own life, right, you create certain meaning for yourself, and that it is our responsibility to kind of do that. You don't need to have a huge why, but you kind of create that meaning in your daily life and slowly build on that. I think that helped him.
This is beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm going to share my take because I was very, very committed to finding answers to this because I noticed, even I myself, I was languishing as well. I watch Netflix, I will chill. And the danger is because I teach social media. So it seems like a legitimate reason to be on social media.
Yeah.
But I do notice that there's the sense of aimlessness, especially last year because I was being managed by a company and I left that company and all of a sudden there's no more purpose and now I have a word called languishing. So I want to share with you guys 3 ways that you can move from languishing to flourishing.
Looking forward. I'm all ears.
All right, 3 M's. Okay, first M is mastery, which is create small wins every single day. Don't aim for perfection. Don't aim for outcomes. Aim for progression. If every day you're progressing, you have already won. And so make sure you have small little wins every single day. Set those wins. Number 2, interestingly enough, is mindfulness. And that by staying present to that particular task, you allow it to unfold and to give you joy and happiness that sometimes you don't get it when you multitask. So for example, a good example would be eating your food, right? A lot of times we eat food and we watch Netflix. But if you really truly eat a food and give or take 5 to 10 minutes, suddenly you realize, oh my God, the chicken actually tastes really good. And I remember one of my friends, she went to a grocery store and she said, I'm going to be mindful in my grocery store. And then she was rushing through the grocery store buying stuff, right? And then she noticed, wait, why am I rushing? I'm not running out of time. I'm going to enjoy it. And you know what she did? She suddenly passed by the cheese platter area and she told me, I want to buy the Podomoro or some cheese, I don't know, very atas cheese. And she said she bought it, she ate it and she cried. She's like, oh my God, this is like the best cheese I ever ate. And that's mindfulness. Yeah. And the last one is exactly what you just said, which is meaning. And we need to connect meaning, purpose to our work, which means that every one of you listening to this, ask yourself, who are the people that you actually help? And the fact of the matter is, you have helped someone. Go find out who are the people that you help. Go talk to them and find out how you have impacted their lives. It could be your child, it could be your spouse, it could be your parent, it could be your customer, it could be a follower. But if every single day you connect to how you matter in life, you will never languish. So these are the 3 M's: mastery, mindfulness, and meaning.
It's a beautiful snippet that I'll save and send to people. If I may add just 1 or 2 things, right, on meaning. Interestingly, as a study by the most happiest jobs in the world, and they found out that the people the most happy are actually the jobs that the meaning is very apparent. Teaching, a clergyman, very apparent because when you do your work, is reflected very clearly. But the ones that are most unhappy, guess, it's hard to guess, but one of them is one person that lays the bricks on the wall.
Oh, of course.
So apparently they're saying that, okay, it's not that the job has no meaning, it's just that maybe
you can't connect the dots.
You can't connect the dots. You're not there when the roof is leaking or when the person is grateful when you're laying
such a nice wall, that bricklayer wasn't there to hear it.
Yeah. So I think, meaning is definitely one thing. I also want to talk about, previously you talked about mindfulness.
Yes.
I want to just read out something which I thought was very powerful. You talk about your friend crying, right? It might seem odd, but actually it's not.
And it was like when I was watching her Instagram story, I was like, I think I can relate to that. I mean, I can't remember when was the last time I cried when I ate some food that was so good. But she reminded me about the importance of just being mindful. So what's that quote that you have?
This is by Kurt Von. I can't pronounce his name. I think probably edited it in. But he's a good writer. So he wrote a book, A Man Without a Country, just observing daily life. So the prelude is that he noticed people that were just not happy, right? He noticed that people walking around, right, so somehow like their face were frowning. They're just not happy with their life. And then he said this. He said, "And I urge you to please notice when you are happy, and exclaim or murmur or think at some point, if this isn't nice, I don't know what is." Yeah. So it's kind of an anchor for you to remember that, hey, if it's just a cai fan for me, I murmur.
Chicken nugget.
Correct. I love cai fan. So to me, if I just eat it, like you said, I taste the zhen dan, I taste the chicken, I would say, if this isn't nice, I don't know what is. You just anchor that moment. I urge you to notice when you're happy.
If this isn't nice,
I don't know what is.
I don't know what is. So every time I have a happy experience, like right now, I'm laughing with you, and then I'll say to myself, if this isn't life, if this isn't nice, if this isn't nice, I don't know what is.
But you can replace it with life. That's a great thing. You can replace it with anything you want.
Yeah, I want to change it to, if this isn't life, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, replace with whatever you want. But the whole idea is to anchor the meaning like you said. Anchor the happiness.
Anchor the happiness.
And the mindfulness,
And to remind myself that that's supposed to be the dominant emotion I'm supposed to be feeling.
Yeah.
You're the best, man. Thanks for this. Today's interview is so heartfelt. So difficult conversation, I feel sometimes, for all of us. I like to go back to the full circle because we started off with the question of why you do what you do, and you shared your backstory. Now I want to ask you, of all the people that you have helped so far, who is the most memorable one?
Wow. I think I would have to say that, I mean, along the way, my journey, public speaking, sharing with kids and everything, there are moments when they come up to you, and they say, thank you, Cher, because of you, I decided to seek help. Nothing will replace that. I remember one of them, I took a risk and I was vulnerable with them. I played a game with them. I was being vulnerable. So after that, they came up, she tore a paper, she wrote there, thank you so much. Because of you, months of suppressed emotions were finally let out. And I know that my friends and my teachers care for me. And she gave it to me. That was...
Money can't buy that, man.
Cannot. Incidentally, that was the highest paying money in my business, but it was nothing. It was absolutely nothing compared to that moment.
How old was that girl?
I think very young, 13, 14.
And it's an important age because back then when you're 13, 14, no one helps you with all those things, right?
Yeah.
It's just all about studies, and you saved her. And I would say it's an inflection point in her life.
Yeah. I would say also another thing is that before I shared this, I wanted to say one was my first girlfriend and partner. I remember it was through the video that she reached out to me. So she had not just depression, she also had eating disorder. And it was very difficult to... I mean, at that point, of course, we supported each other, but it was my first real... it's you feel pain on a different level when, eating disorders is, basically you get to a point where you vomit, right? And then it corrodes your esophagus, and then you can die anytime. Like if there's a hole, you can die. So they don't just die from... And of course, if you don't eat as well, your heart can stop anytime. And so like it's very scary. And I remember it was memorable because like during one time I went to the hospital, right? And of course she was there, she was admitted, right? But at a bit opposite me, there was one person that was like sticked in. It was ghastly, right? And I remember so clearly, she looked at me, right? She made eye contact with me. She looked at me and said, please, she's asking for food, so she just said, please give me food. I remember looking at that, right? It sucked the soul out of me. Till today, I vividly remember it because it completely sucked the spirit out of me. And that today, right, is what drives me. In some sense, it's memorable. It's because that pain is what drives me today. That void is what drives me today. And I think it goes back full circle to what I mentioned earlier.
Your values are determined by that
void. And it's not. It is people shouldn't have to suffer like that. Life is so beautiful. Right? There's so much joy that we can experience, so much fulfillment, contribution. And to get into that state is a tragedy that we need to prevent.
Well, there's people like you now. And thank God for social media. Your words, your thoughts get to, be disseminated to large number of people.
Yeah.
Right? Even to all the people listening to us right now, watching us right now.
Yeah, thank you. And I wish that thank you again for giving me this platform.
No, thank you. If this is not live, I do not know what is. I love that. That's my biggest takeaway from you.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, we come to the end of today's interview, and I would love you to share with the audience, like, what's the final advice that you want to give them based on how you feel right now. What would be something you'd like to say to them?
I think in life we are conditioned to think that outcomes matter, that our achievements, that life is an accumulation of what we get, right, and the results. But we need to remind ourselves that the greatest reward for our dedication to excellence or dedication to our work is not what we get from it, but who we become through it. It's not what we get, but what we give that ultimately defines us. And I go back to first principles and remember that when I get anxious, I look at the thing on my wall that says, Kevin, like you are born, you were born with nothing, and you will leave with nothing. So there is nothing to gain and everything to give. And at the end of life's journey, people will not remember what you had. They will always remember what you give and the impact you left on them. So just remember that, keep that things in perspective.
This is so beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm just stunned because it was like just absorbing what you just said.
No. When I hosted you on my podcast as well, you also shared the same thing.
Yeah,
about
but
the tears in heaven.
Oh, but it's different now because I'm the one holding space for you, and I'm just very touched by you, your soul. Like what you're willing to step up. Like you said, meaning is up to us to define.
Yeah.
And I can see that you have set one really big one.
Yeah.
And I wish you all the best and continue doing what you're doing. Every soul matters and everything that you do will make a difference. All right. So for those of you listening, that's Kevin. And Kevin, finally, let us know, if we want to keep in touch with you, we want to thank you in person. We want to ask you more questions. What's the best way that we can reach you?
Sure. My personal Instagram is Kevin Wee. My LinkedIn might take a while, but Kevin Wee, connect me on Kevin Wee on Instagram. And then, of course, Rebound with Resilience. You can check it out on YouTube, Spotify, or
and
Instagram.
TikTok.
Yeah,
TikTok was Rebound with Resilience too, right?
Yes.
Yes, go watch his TikTok videos. It's so enjoyable and so easy to consume information about mental wellness. Yeah. All right, so to those of you listening and watching, I sincerely, together with Kevin, keep you guys in our prayers, and we wish you all the very best in everything that you do, and that if you are currently going through a difficult time, there's darkness in your life, reach out to any one of us, Kevin, myself. We're not going to judge. We're not going to try to advise. We're just going to listen. And I'm really sending this out to you sincerely, not just a call to action, but sincerely. If you're going through something right now, it is not a coincidence that you're listening to this.
Yep.
It's not a coincidence. I never believe in coincidence. I believe that you're meant to listen to this. And I'm inviting you to reach out to either one of us, Kevin or myself, depending on what your heart feels like. And just let us know you listen to this podcast, and we'll love to at least give you the space to share. All right. So thank you. And Kevin, I'll hope to see you soon. Okay. High five. Okay. Yes. So this is Kevin Wee, and I hope you guys enjoyed this interview. My biggest takeaway from Kevin is that, the depths of one's struggle truly determine the height of one's success. And that, the only reason why Kevin can speak with so much gravitas and so much weight and so much power is because he has been through it. And he understands the pain that people are going through, and he decides that this is going to be his life purpose and mission to help people. And so if you are going through a certain struggle and certain pain, I just want to let you know that you're not going through that struggle for no purpose. You're going through it because one day, your mess is going to be somebody else's message, and your trial is going to be somebody else's testimony. So hang in there. And again, as I said, if you need help, reach out. You can reach out to us privately. Be more than happy to lend you support in whichever way that we can. All right, so we do interviews like this once every week, and you get to watch the interviews on YouTube. So if you love this, remember to hit the subscribe button, switch on the bell notification, and I'll see you in the next video.